Call the meeting of the Port Orange Planning Commission for September 25th to order, please. If y'all please rise. Pledge of allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Amen.
All righty, if you'll please call the roll.
Stan Schmidt,
Present.
Scott Sager,
Here.
Daniel Malago, Maria Mills Benet,
Here.
Robo Fanny,
I'm here.
Tom Jordan.
I am here. Thank you very much. Moving into the next item is consideration of the minutes from last meeting, which was a very quick meeting.
About 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last month.
Good
Second.
deal. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we got a couple of items on here on the agenda. I think some people are here for this, huh? We usually have a much
Usually-
smaller crowd.
Usually it's crickets out there.
Yeah, Robert's usually the only one here.
Yeah.
So, glad you're here. Let me give you a couple pieces of information just so you know how we work if you've never been to one of these before. So we're going to have both items opened up at the same time that relate to the project out on Airport Road. We will then have a presentation from staff, and then we have a presentation from the applicant, and then we will have public comment, and everybody gets 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and you'll know we have a timer right up front here, and a rather loud alarm will go off that will let you know your time is up. We would appreciate it. We understand everybody has comments, concerns, questions, that kind of thing. If somebody's already said all the stuff you want to say, kind of stick to the new points. That would help tremendously, so you're not all just saying the same thing over and over again. Just a suggestion for you. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we're a quasi-judicial body, so when you come up, you need to give us your name and your address. And if you're not a Port Orange resident, make sure you tell us what city that address is in, so the clerk can keep a record of this, keep a record of it. The other thing to remind you of is we all live here in Port Orange. So we're not from out of town. We're Port Orange residents just like you, and we don't get paid to do this. Just a thought. Stan.
No, I was just signaling I got,
Oh, okay.
trying to catch
Thought
me.
you were waving at something. Okay, we cool. I'll take a motion from the body for case number, which one are we on here? CPAM-25-0001, a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment for Vintage Acres. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve case number CPAM-25-0001, large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, Vintage Acres.
Very cool. And we have a second. Motion and a second on that one. I'd also like to have a motion to open up the related case PRZA-25-0003, which is the PUD rezoning for Vintage Acres.
Motion to approve case number PRZA-25-0003, PUD rezoning for Vintage Acres.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on that. Okay, we've got both cases open.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's right. I got to call and stand.
before we get started on this discussion, I need to disclose that I have a voting conflict on this issue. And I filed Form 8B with the clerk. It just states that my name, I'm a member of the Planning Commission, gives my address, and I'm an appointed person, and this applies to the vote that's going to be taken today. Disclosure of local officers' interest. I, Stanley Schmidt, hereby disclose that on September 25th of 25, a measure came or will come before my agency, which inures to my special private gain or loss. And what that is I provide accounting services to the petitioner, Paytas Homes. Their fees are more than half of my total business revenue. And I've been working with Paytas Homes for 30 years, quite a while anyway. And so because of that, I cannot vote on either of these two issues. I can participate in the discussion if I choose, so we'll go from that.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Dan. Now, we can move on to Penny.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, good evening. Penelope Cruz. Planning, we have both items open, so I will give one presentation that will address both items. The subject property, as you know, is located on the west side of Airport Road, north of Charles Street, and it was recently annexed into the city of Port Orange in June. As discussed during the public hearings for the voluntary annexation, the next steps, as required by Florida statute, are the assignment of a city future land use designation and a corresponding city zoning classification. The subject applications are the applicant's request to establish that city future land use designation and zoning classification to support the development of a residential subdivision consistent with what was outlined in the annexation staff report and the public hearing discussions. The property is primarily cleared, vacant pasture land with a single-family home, detached garage, and pole barn located at the northeast corner of the subject property. Based on the aerial imagery, the subject property has been a cleared pasture land since at least 1978. That's the oldest imagery we were able to obtain. And according to the environmental report that was referenced in the staff report, there are no wetlands on this property. With the first item, the applicant is requesting to change the future land use map designation from approximately 52.96 acres of Volusia County agricultural resource, 1 unit per 10 acres, and 3.57 acres of Volusia County urban low intensity, 0 to 4 units per acre, to City of Port Orange rural transition, 0 to 2 units per acre. The rural transition category that is proposed is intended for lands near Spruce Creek and its tributaries, particularly where properties lie between agricultural uses and established residential neighborhoods, with the residential development limited to no more than 2 units per acre. The subject property meets this locational criteria for the rural transition designation, as it is situated adjacent to Spruce Creek, bordered by agricultural land to the south, and developed residential neighborhoods to the north, northeast, and west. Urban services are available in the Airport Road right-of-way to serve the site, and the proposed Vintage Acres PUD aligns with the maximum allowed density of 2 units per acre. According to the infrastructure impact analysis in the comprehensive plan amendment staff report, adequate public facilities and capacity exist for sewer, potable water, solid waste, recreation, and schools to accommodate the proposed amendment. As for traffic, only one roadway segment, Pioneer Trail from Airport Road to Turnbull Bay Road, was identified that may be above the adopted level service standard. And as is required by our land development code, any future subdivision, plat, and plan for the subject property will be subject to all transportation concurrency regulations, requiring adequate public facilities to be provided or be mitigated any impacts created by the proposed development. Approval of a tri-party transportation fair share agreement between the city, Volusia County, and the developer may be required to address those impacts to the roadway network. With the second item on the agenda, the applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 56.53 acres, consisting of 52.96 acres zoned Volusia County A1 and 3.57 acres zoned Volusia County A2 to City of Port Orange Planned Unit Development, and to establish the Vintage Acres Master Development Agreement and Conceptual Development Plan, which establishes the framework for the development of a single-family residential subdivision. The proposed PUD allows for the development of 113 residential dwelling units, resulting in a density of 2 units per acre, which is consistent with the density of the surrounding area. This is the concept plan that was in your staff report as well. The main access point to the proposed subdivision will be from Airport Road, and that would be subject to approval of the Volusia County driveway permitting process, as Airport Road is a Volusia County road maintained roadway. An emergency only access will be provided as a connection to Charles Street, usable only during emergencies if the Airport Road access point is blocked. And that gated emergency access will be maintained by the HOA and sized to accommodate emergency vehicles. Also, because Charles Street is a county maintained road, that would also be subject to the Volusia County's driveway permitting process. The concept plan and the MDA also address a right turn lane and a left turn lane from Airport Road into the subdivision, which would be constructed subject to approval of the county's driveway permitting process, again, because Airport Road is a county maintained road. The concept plan and the PUD also require an 8-foot wide sidewalk to be constructed along Airport Road frontage of the subject property to connect to the existing sidewalk network on Airport Road, as well as the internal sidewalk network within the subdivision. All the streets within the subdivision are supposed to be public and designed in accordance with the city's local roadway standards, including a 4-foot wide sidewalk on both sides. The proposed dimensional requirements for the PUD, which was listed in your staff report, are generally consistent with adjacent city residential subdivisions in the PUD. The PUD will comply with the tree preservation requirements in the city's code and exceeds the landscape buffer requirements in the code. Now, when the subdivision plat and plan is submitted, that formal review will take place for the landscaping and tree preservation to ensure that compliance with the MDA and the land development code. The proposed concept plan indicates a minimum of 65% of the PUD property being reserved for open space, which exceeds the code minimum of 60% open space by 5% or 2.83 acres. According to the city's regulations, a subject property must be able to manage stormwater on the property after development as it does prior to development or in its current undeveloped state. Therefore, with the development of the subject property, there can be no loss in the ability to hold stormwater or an increase in the volume of stormwater discharged or the peak rate of stormwater discharged from the subject property into the regional drainage system. And in addition to complying with those city regulations, the subject property will also be required to meet all state, regional permitting requirements for stormwater management, including those from the St. Johns River Water Management District, the Department of Environmental Protection, and Volusia County prior to any development approval of the subject property. Currently, the stormwater on the undeveloped property is partially absorbed into the ground, with some collecting in low areas and ditches on the subject property, and then runoff not absorbed or stored on site drains into the Volusia County maintained swales along Charles Street, Russell Road, and Airport Road. From there, it flows towards the county maintained swale at the southwest intersection of Charles Street and Russell Road, then to Spruce Creek, and ultimately discharges into the Halifax River. According to the project engineer and the Vintage Acres MDA, the PUD includes stormwater requirements that exceed the city's current requirements. Specifically, the MDA requires the stormwater system to reduce the peak flow rate stormwater can leave the site and the total volume of water that drains off the site by an additional 25% beyond the current code requirements. To meet this higher standard in the PUD, the stormwater ponds for any future subdivision will need to be larger and have additional capacity to store more stormwater on site than required by the current code requirements for a designed storm event. Therefore, more of the subject property will be set aside for stormwater storage than would be required under the current code. There are no policy deviations requested as part of this PUD. The proposed subdivision will comply with all applicable requirements of the city's land development code, and as shown on the screen, according to the master development agreement and conceptual development plan, certain provisions within the PUD will exceed the minimum standards of the LDC. If the proposed comprehensive plan amendment and PUD rezoning are approved, the applicant must later submit a detailed subdivision plat and plan that complies with the master development agreement, concept plan, land development code, and applicable state and regional permitting requirements from St. Johns River Water Management District, Department of Environmental Protection, and Volusia County. Public notice signs were posted on the subject property on August 1st. Staff has received phone calls or emails from 13 individuals requesting general information about the proposed PUD rezoning, and the primary concerns raised included avoiding vehicular access onto Charles and Russell Road, which the PUD does, and potential drainage impacts. The applicant also held a neighborhood meeting on September 4th. Approximately 45 residents attended the meeting, and according to the applicant's meeting summary, the main questions and concerns raised by the attendees included drainage, school capacity, and pedestrian safety. Staff is recommending approval of the comprehensive plan amendment and the PUD rezoning and is here to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is also here.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Penny. Scott? Any comments, questions for Penny?
Um, I acknowledge that development is coming all around us, whether we like it or not. I think that many of the people who are sitting here today are a little bit challenged by the fact that we drove in the rain. And I came down that road actually from my office in Venetian Bay coming in. I do have a little bit of a concern with the number of units being proposed in the area, and I'm a little bit concerned about an impervious surface of 70% as opposed to 60% in the surrounding areas. Have you had any conversations about that?
Not generally as far as the impervious surface because of the higher standards of the drainage they still have to meet.
Okay.
And then the number of units is actually, let me put that one screen back up. It is actually lower than some of the adjacent density in the surrounding area. Oh, where's my slide go? I'm missing my slide. There it is. So this slide here will show you the density of some of the adjacent neighborhoods here. 2.4, we've got 8 units per acre. The largest Water's Edge being 2 units per acre. And so that was discussed during the annexation with the city council, and the goal, and it was foreshadowed at that point that if it was annexed, this is what they would come in with, was 2 units per acre, because that was consistent with the area there. So there was discussion leading up to the annexation and these applications that staff could not recommend approval of anything higher than 2 units per
Right.
acre.
And do you feel that the retention and detention ponds that are being proposed are adequate to cover that?
So there's no full engineering at this point because we are at a land use and zoning stage.
Okay.
But when they come in for their subdivision plan plans or full engineering, it's not a feeling. They have to. They wrote in their legal document that is going to be recorded that they are holding themselves to a 25% higher standard than our minimum code. So we can't approve plans unless it meets that higher standard.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my primary concerns.
Cool. Bo?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Reading through the document, I noticed there was a comment about the flooding over the past 100 years, only 5 years. Were they recent years? Do you know when that happened?
There's a chart in the staff report that shows those events that were the larger events beyond the 11-inch storms. If you look at the PUD staff report on page 11, it has the years and the numbers there in that chart.
Okay. So these were recent years. Okay. Going back to Scott's question about the impervious surfaces, I don't know if I missed it or not, but is there a percentage of occupation of impervious surfaces on a development? I mean, do we have control over how much of that can be impervious? I know
Yeah, that's what the standard impervious, maximum impervious is. So the PUD as a whole, the code requires 60% open space, no impervious.
Okay, that's my question.
Well, so that's for the PUD as a whole. They're going above that standard at 65% open space. And then there's a individual lot impervious standard, and that's where on just the individual lots, the standard is 70% for impervious. That includes all buildings, your home, any shed, any kind of building you have, driveway, patios, all that.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. That's it.
You good?
Thank you for now.
Maria?
I'm okay for now.
All right, couple questions. My big thing is, well, one of my big things here is traffic. So when I look at the numbers and what you guys talked about in the tables, I know capacity, I don't want to say this, capacity is calculated. We have the peak morning, peak evening in totals. But I'm looking at Pioneer Trail especially as being one of the potential bottlenecks. The numbers that they're using, are they including all of the potential development that's already been allowed in New Smyrna Beach
Yes.
and all of Woodhaven? So because those numbers are already kind of defined now.
Yes, so the analysis at this point, and there'll be a more detailed analysis if the land use and zoning gets approved and they move to actual subdivision plans where we get into the actual concurrency analysis, it'll be more detailed at that point. But the analysis, even at this point, does include background trips, and that's why it was saying basically, and it was documented in the staff report, that with all the development proposed on
Okay.
Pioneer Trail in New Smyrna Beach, plus this, there is the concern about that one segment of Pioneer Trail,
Mhm.
and that's why additional analysis needs to be looked at if it gets to the actual traffic concurrency phase. And at that point, we wouldn't be able to approve the subdivision unless there's either a physical improvement or some sort of mitigation to alleviate that.
Yeah, I mean, that puts us in a situation with like Williamson, where we have that one bottleneck, and that's, well, we're still building because we can find fair share money, we go put it into projects that help sort of alleviate that, right?
It has to meet defined criteria, so we have,
Of where the fair share
We
goes
have-
to affect that.
well, we
right?
have countywide traffic analysis requirements for how we do traffic analysis throughout the county through the Transportation Planning Organization. And so there's specific requirements of how they do that analysis, and if it meets those requirements and there's an improvement that can either physically be built or the mitigation to an improvement that can be built within a certain time frame, then we have to, per state law, address
Got
that,
it.
approve that concurrency.
So even though it can't be done right now, it's planned and can be done
Mhm.
in the future.
Within a reasonable time frame.
Okay, all right. Yeah, the other thing I'm trying to figure out is the stormwater. So and maybe the engineers will talk about this, but when I look at it, you talk about the large volume rain events that are in here, and we've had 5 in 100 years, right?
That's what the data shows.
4 and 20.
But yeah, 4 of them have been in the last 20 years. So for 80 years we had 1, and it's happening. And I guess I don't have a question. It's
Yeah,
more a
and as you
comment.
know, with some of the discussion that's been happening, our hands are tied right now to revise our current standards, but the applicant, on their own accord, has put into their legal document that they're gonna go above and beyond code to add more volume storage and reduce that,
Right.
that flow rate.
And that's really the issue here. We have to decide based on these facts and what the law says we have to look at, regardless of what may be happening down the road at the state level. So, all right. Thanks. That's all I had for you. I appreciate your time.
And if something changes with the state law, just to address that, and we are able to change our standards and go higher, they still would have to comply with that, even if it's above the 25%. Like, they would still have to apply with that higher standard.
Yeah. I'm sure the applicant's engineers can help us out with these answers. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so the applicant, Mr. Posey, you want to come up? Mr. Paytas, whichever we're going to bring up. You need to get paid, so I guess you're
Tag team.
It's gonna be a tag team.
This is pro bono.
Well, that's fine too. Alright, there I am. Okay. Alrighty, so, good evening, Joey Posey, 420 South Nova, attorney for the applicant, and, Penny did a great job summarizing a lot of probably what I'm gonna touch on, but, I mean, there's several aspects of this project that I think we need to dive in a little deeper, and we do have the development team here, the engineers here, obviously to talk towards the stormwater issues. I'm an attorney, I'm not an expert in stormwater, and you have a actual builder who has been doing this in the area for decades and has really real life experience when it comes to these issues. So I think that's an added benefit, doesn't have to be a negative, and having a cordial conversation about that's a good thing. So. Like Penny had identified, we're really dealing with about 56 acres. It's an old farm. It's you can probably go back to the 50s and it's got the farm. It's harder to see, but the farm has been there for several decades. It's been impacted. It's been farmed. It's been harvested. It's impacted land. The designations I think Penny had identified. And the request is, as she mentioned, rural transition up to 2 acres. Units per acre and a PUD. Just to give you a sense of the zoning map that isn't an aerial, most of the surrounding properties are PUDs. even Fly-In's a PUD. I think the mobile home park is a vestige of the county MH. I can't remember which category it is, but for the most part, they are PUDs. So that's a consistent zoning category to go to. And the densities, as you get closer to the interstate, the density increases, but immediately adjacent is the rural transition, which is exactly the density we're asking for, and you actually have office transition, which goes up to 16 units, and urban medium density. But there's, I'm sure, unique aspects to those projects too, but it isn't inconsistent. You're really stepping down. That's really what's happening here. These are the aerials that in the staff report. Obviously, you can see it's really the existing conditions been the same since the 70s at least. With that in mind, the proposal from the get-go, really working with staff over the last year, trying to figure out, really how to design this project that, we all recognize stormwater is an issue, we all recognize that traffic's an issue, and doing it in a way that is just responsive to those concerns, but, isn't a line in the sand that says that, nothing's possible here. That doesn't get you anywhere, that doesn't move the needle, it doesn't address issues, and it doesn't solve problems that citywide are happening by addressing other failing infrastructure or even areas of the city that are suffering from stormwater issues. One of the things in the staff report I thought was interesting was just how many of the homes in the city have been built prior to 1990 in those standards. And that's not something you necessarily can unwind the clock and fix, but telling somebody no that you can't develop your property doesn't fix that either. So, trying to find a solution that helps the citizens and also keeps, folks moving within reason, coming to the city, putting their tax dollars into the city, giving that city, making that revenue for the city so they can put that money towards these improvements that are necessary. That's really the goal here. And Jim could speak to that in a little bit, but that's how I conceptualize it. And really that's what we've been working backwards from with how to make this project feasible from where he started at 153 units and really stepping it down from all the way to we're at 112 plus what is we call the Ballman tract, which is the property to the north that is going to be remaining 1 acre tract of land for the Ballman family. And here's the project. Just to give you a sense of the scope, just to clarify a few things real quick. Penny had mentioned, the impervious coverage, when talking in terms of 70%, that's per lot. And the idea there is that, if you can shrink this to an extent to encourage folks to really put some money into their home and do an upscale community, well, that's the idea. That, if you want a bigger home, that's going to have bigger coverage. That's the logic of it. So, that's really what we're aiming for, and also consolidating it and keeping those lots a consistent size at those larger lot sizes, and then trying to also balance the fact that we do less impervious is best, because that's what the stormwater concerns are aimed at, and that's what we're trying to address too. As Penny had mentioned, we exceeded. We're at 65%, and I something that is very I think that from the perspective of the engineers and how they're designed, we're only 34.7% impervious coverage. That's fairly low, and that doesn't mean we're impacting what the existing vegetation on the property is. That's very low too. But we've managed to design the project where we're not impacting a specimen tree. The pockets of trees that exist on the site, they remain. So that's, I think, trying to be responsible and trying to figure out how this puzzle piece fits together is what we've been tinkering with and working with staff with for about a year. As Penny had mentioned, the city standard, that the 100-year, 24-hour event standard, we are voluntarily going to a 25% increase of that standard to both on the discharge side and the capacity side. So you're seeing at least a 25% drop on the existing condition. So, for folks that are concerned about stormwater, of course, I can't speak necessarily to the capacity beyond the system, when the system is reached beyond that. But, the engineer will speak intelligently to this, and, it's really in all storm events, you're getting a better outcome. It may not be the outcome that solves the problem for a bigger issue citywide, but it's a much better situation on the property than it would exist in its, impacted farm state. That's the point, that when you develop it, when you make a stormwater system that increases the minimum standard, that the discharge rate off the site is less. Therefore, that gives folks the ability to, for instance, on Spruce Creek, that there's more capacity in the creek that can take that capacity. It doesn't resolve your, major storm events, once in 1,000 years, but from the, making their situation better, that has an incremental step in the right direction, which is what we're trying to solve with this project. The landscapes buffers are all double the size, adjoining the roads, adjoining the project or Spruce, the fly-in, that, they're double the minimum standard of what would otherwise be required in the PUD minimum standards. There's no waivers and variances, as Penny had identified. I'm not sure. Most of our criteria far exceed the minimum standard, and from our perspective, it's the right way to do it. That's why we see this as a good thing. That there's a lot of good, smart growth that's happening with the project as designed. The traffic impacts, I think we had mentioned that the capacities are there. I was actually just taking a quick look at the vested trips that were part of that analysis, and it actually goes as far out as if you go Luna Bella all the way to 44. That Ocean Gate, that's actually in that calculation. So if they're looking at all of those impacts through Venetian Bay, off of Pioneer. That's what's being contemplated as part of this review, because those projects are vested, they're coming. And although there's not infrastructure in the ground, we have to anticipate their impacts. So that's something that's also being required as part of this project too. And as I think as alluded to, that this project does generate prop fair share. It does generate monies that go towards impacts, that go towards those traffic improvements that we're looking for. And as we've designed the project, you right turn lanes, the decel lane, you're expanding the right of way. You're making left turn out, right turn out. That there's a lot of safe traffic movements just right in front of that project that doesn't prohibit traffic, but doesn't make an unsafe condition either. The project, the right of ways in the project, they're 24-foot wide plus Miami curbs on both sides. That's a very wide right of way for safety of emergency vehicles. And I had mentioned the primary access off airport, because a concern we had heard through this process is folks on Charles didn't want to be impacted by traffic, so we said that's fine. We're happy to do that and just make that emergency only, that if, in the event if there's an emergency, that's the only way it can be used. But it's off of airport is the only entrance for the residents to use in and out unless there's an emergency. Like I had mentioned, the home design, it's supposed to be upscale homes. This is just some sense of what they're going to look like. Some have side entrance garages. That's the goal of this community. There's architectural interest and enhanced appeal to them. Another project that the Paytas group has done that we had pointed out was the Reserve of Victoria with its monument feature, that we thought would be something that you guys would like to see to get a sense of it. We've been doing preliminary sketches of how the entrance would look. I don't necessarily have a color version, so it's not meant to be Halloween. But just to give you an idea that they're putting in the time and the effort to try to design this project in a way that that fits with the community. That's not just your normal residential subdivision. The neighborhood meeting, we had there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of I think. Acoustics issues and a lot of questions I didn't feel necessarily got answered, and we're trying to also answer those for those folks too. Some things that were included was the flight path, how the management of the system management from a nutrient level and from stormwater runoff, how would that function, how does that work? The discharge, what happens when it's discharged, pedestrian safety on school route, flood risk, and some of the things that may have not been apparent is that the stormwater design, like we said, you're adding 25% beyond the minimum just simply on capacity and discharge. And the Charles Point road access, emergency only. And then we went and actually pulled the flight paths. Just to get a sense of what the flight paths were. And it doesn't look like any of them necessarily follow or flow or go over this property. I don't doubt that it does happen from fly-in. So what we're willing to do is that we're happy to put it in our docs, that there's an acknowledgement that there's, folk, that there's a flight community to the north, and that if planes are coming, don't come complain. Not a problem, we're happy to do that. We have no problem with a visual buffer from Spruce Creek fly-in. It's a double the buffer size, but if there's additional screening that can be applied, we're happy to do it. The littoral plantings along the shelves of the stormwater ponds, that seems like an added plus. We're happy to do it. The crosswalk, I think, was mentioned too, to make sure that there's safe ingress and egress for students across airport. Not a problem. And like I had mentioned, that the recognizing the plane paths and potential for going over the project, and making sure that those are in the docs for the community. And the developer has no problem with these changes. And I just want to make that clear for the record. And however this happens, is that these are things that we're stipulating to, and we have no problem to doing that. As to the stormwater, of course, I would defer to the engineer, but just to give you a sense of what we've been designing, of course, it's greater than the minimum standards for both St. John's and the city. It's a two-stage treatment where you're talking about the dry retention into wet retention, and this treatment and storage through the wet detention ponds is how it eventually gets treated. And the dry is really to capture all of those the first round of the wet nutrients, those the nitrogen and phosphorus that may be in the ground that you do not want to go into the creek. That trying to capture that, and you want to get to those before the discharge occurs into the wet pond. And the wet detention pond is actually a treatment volume equal to 150% of the minimum. So the math works a little differently on the 25%, but the ponds themselves are 150. And the post, like I mentioned, and this is verbatim in the document, but the post-treat development peak discharge rate has to be reduced by at least 25% from what the 100-year 24-hour event standard is. So water leaving the site has to be far less than water leaving the site today. And that's the idea. You want to design a system in a way that, one, it can be feasible. You want to have a development that can support itself, but at the same time that recognizes community concerns, and trying to thread that needle, one way or the other to get a project that I think can be both benefit to everybody involved, even though it's not the perfect answer. And now I'm going to turn it over to the developer just to get a sense of who he is. For folks that weren't at the neighborhood meeting, it's probably just understanding his reputation and who he is. He's a local. I'm also a local, so it's it's not like we're strangers either. But just we want them to be reassured that what happens is when you see him at Publix, it's going to be an awkward conversation if anything ever happens. So maybe I'll put it over to Jim at this point.
Target Walmart. Good evening. I'm Jim Paytas with Paytas Homes and development team. Got my son here. I'm from 908 Taylor Road, Port Orange is my office, and I'm at 2768 South Peninsula Drive in Daytona Beach is where my residence is. Just right there at Port Orange. I appreciate the time, and I'm after lots. I'm after lot inventory. I'm a home builder, right? You end up being a developer by default because you're constantly fighting the battle of trying to get some lot inventory to continue what I've done my entire life, 35 years. Seems like a lifetime. My dad retired after 18, and I'm going on 35, so I'm trying to figure out how that happened. But, you continue your drive. It's like a motivation that you have, and an ever-changing challenge, from customers and what they want and need, and their expectations and all that kind of stuff, and their changes they want to do, and their, the things they learn. It's just a constant challenge. So I'm trying to figure out what that battle is I'm fighting, but there's something about it that I enjoy. So I continue to do it, and the challenge of getting a lot of inventory has been the hardest part. So looking at this site there for quite some time, we built I lived out quite a place in the country, so I'm a past resident of there as well, just on the other side of the creek. But all the houses and spring water and waterway right there in Spruce Creek that are just north of this. Of course, I've done a lot down south of there, did a lot of neighborhoods, Pinnacle Park, Sawgrass, Cypress Head, You know, Ashton Lake was my first development I did, developing it from ground up. But a couple things that I wanted to mention here real quick. And except for the cost of this property, this site is virtually I don't want to call it perfect, no site perfect, but this is about as good as you can find because of the pasture. A pasture you can clean up and you can help the nutrients, phosphorus, they call them nutrients, but they're really damaging nutrients to the creek. So we have a chance there where we can take and clean that up from going from the pasture to the creek. That's one big benefit here of converting a pasture land to that. So that's one thing. It doesn't have, I know it officially doesn't have wetlands. I know there's a chuckle on site because there's a little area there that was a pond for horses or cows and stuff. I think they get their drink, but you know, we found no wetlands on the site through a biologist study. There are no trees that we have to contend with, so we're not going to clear cut something and get blamed for that, even though we're forced to clear cut something every time we do a project by you know, we'll get into that. I don't want to clear cut anything. And we know a couple things I want to point out. One project cannot fix the problems we're having with stormwater because, you know, in my family, we have a house that my dad actually has that floods that we deal with every time the tide comes up. So we're in that situation. This project cannot fix all the problems, but this project does contain some ingredients of the overall recipe because the way I see it is every time that a city or municipality has a project, they have an opportunity to get some sort of benefit. And we truly feel and we know through what we're going to design and provide that we're providing a benefit. It's not the ultimate fix. This project won't fix everything. We know that. Take a retention pond out there and an entire hole, that's not going to happen. It's just going to fill up with groundwater. That's not the answer. So it's a recipe all around different parts of the city. That's a different part of the city than what we're going through over here or what some folks are going through over on the east side. It's two completely different situations, but we do have one creek and one B19 canal and we have all that stuff. This project will install and donate a utility system with state-of-the-art lift station that enhances the utility system. This project will create tax-based income for the city, potentially offset property tax. Some of this project will be elevated. We get, you know, the big thing is like, oh, your site's going to be up, it's going to block all our water. We've got a long way to go with that to provide all the documentation that says as Penny pointed out in there, none of the water's going to be blocked, none of it's blocked. We're control what we have that's elevated. So we're able to control that and keep that out that Jody was alluding to or talking about. Harry can explain it more if you've got any more questions, but literally, if we raise the site in some areas and we control that stormwater, then it's not being combined with everybody else's stormwater in that valuable storage area in the creek. I come to this realization, and it really helps me understand exactly what we are doing. So it holds and controls it. The project will clean up all the water that will run off in these major storm events. So now with what the water does get off of here, it's going to be cleaner now because of what we talked about earlier. Project only creates 35% of the area to be impervious. You know, we've seen that thing up there. There's only 35% that's going to be impervious now, and we're going to control that. So that's actually a lot smaller area than what people might realize. This project, because it's going to be elevated and it's going to be designed, it itself will not flood, and it's not going to add to the flooding issues that we have. Now, everybody's going to have different opinions. If it's going to help, we feel it's going to help something. Whether you see it, what you can see, the effects of it, you can document, but it's not going to add to the flooding issue. Will not fix the flooding issues in lower communities. No project can. This will not block any water that currently runs through Spruce Creek. We talked about that. This project is done by a builder and developer with a track record, not creating issues, keeping his word, and adding value to the area by utilizing knowledge and history of being in the area for a lifetime. Don't speak a lot, but I wrote that down because I'm kind of proud of that. So, you know, and it's true because I've been through a lot, I've learned a lot, and we're truly doing, not to mention the employment base. Talk about that, we talk about tax base, talk about all 1,000 jobs we create, but that's for another time. The city has the opportunity to harness the developers every time there's a project, add one small ingredient to this overall recipe, and this is one of those opportunities. So we know if we don't do anything, then we'll always get what we always got. So, that's me. Got a question for me? Be glad to answer it.
Maybe we'll just finish the presentation real quick if that's okay. We're close to the end. You know, Jim had hit up the nail on the head. I mean, it does generate revenue. It's one of those things that does provide local jobs to the community too. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that for every project, but there's a truth in that keeps people employed. You know, people are working, they're spending money, they're raising families. That's the goal. That's the idea of what a community should be doing. It's a small pocket. That's a fillable pocket because it's a impacted farm area. That's a pasture. Those are the places you want to see if there's going to be growth in your residential areas of your community. That's where you would expect them. And it's really there's an opportunity because you have a system that we're trying to design that results in a better treatment for the creek. You have a system that's designed that results in less discharge into the creek. And I mentioned this to Tim, but I'm not aware of any other project that's close to the standard. That's something that this is one of a kind. And that's not I'm not trying to boast about that, but that's the point. It's the goal. That when you move, trying to move the needle to make change, that you're trying to get a developer to commit money to a project that if he's willing to give you something that exceeds your minimum standard and it's something that your code doesn't provide for nor a project has offered, that that's an opportunity. So really it's from our perspective that it's a well-designed project. It has a lot of benefits to it. It tries to balance a lot of the concerns we hear, and some I just don't have. I don't have great answers for because I can't speak to a lot of the concerns that a lot of these neighbors have seen in their communities. I can only try to address what our community can do to help them, even though it's not a complete solution for them. My grandmother flooded on Spruce Creek. I grew up in Madeline. I dealt with the flooding. And, of course, I'm frustrated too. But I can only control what's within my little realm of community, and trying to find an answer by telling every project that you can't build. That doesn't solve a problem, because really what happens at the end of the day is you just shift it to a tax. That means the residents of Port Orange have to bear that burden alone, rather than trying to figure out a way to make developers address issues incrementally while encouraging them to want to build here. We're staff recommendation of approval. Very happy with the effort and just the time that Penny and her group put together to really get to this point. And we're available for questions. The engineer's available. Harry can probably talk for hours about stormwater. So if there's anything we can do to ease concerns or address them, we're happy to do it, and we're available. So.
Cool. You all set then?
Yep, that's it.
All right. Good deal. Questions, comments for Joey or Jim?
I do, Joey.
Go ahead.
So we were talking about raising the property, but I'm confused if you're raising the entire property up or just spots of it.
It would be spots. The raising would be in spots. I mean, of course, you have to make the lots. The lots have to be elevated.
Hey, folks, guys, let's be civil about it. Thank you.
The lots have to be elevated. You don't want to flood homes. Of course, it's not going to be elevated to a level that the same would be the grade for the road. And then the stormwater ponds, of course, that they're not being elevated to a point. They're just, it's really a reflection of water table, that you want to be able to hold water. You're not trying to, dig into the water table and then making a wet pond. That doesn't accomplish your goal. But if there's, as to specifics, I'm happy to pull the engineer, but that's the idea. That's what Jim was speaking to.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify because I was unsure. I'm good.
Cool. Good. Bo.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, I had some exposure to a situation similar to this down in Daytona, the area around Beach Street and Fairview. And every time it rains, they get about 4 feet of water in there. And talking to the engineering in Daytona about it, there was conversation about running culverts and putting in, designing the roads there and putting in a roundabout. There's a lot of things that we're talking about, but what the problem with draining into the Halifax River is you're draining uphill, and it's not possible to have the water run into the river when the river level is higher. And I'm just curious about Spruce Creek. I mean, I don't know how much volume we're talking about. That would be an engineering question, I guess. But it just seems like we're adding to that flow, and I'm curious about if there's any resistance there. I mean,
Oh, of course, yeah, and I'll say 2 points, and then maybe I'll defer to Harry, but, especially in Beach Street, that's a very unique situation, and that,
Yeah.
they have the Army Corps actually working on a full study to try to address that issue, because it's, 100 years of, since that, you have building, it's low, when the tide comes in, it has nowhere to go. That, and I think in a nutshell, that makes sense.
yeah, and it's gradually happened over the
Yeah.
years, so, yeah.
And the thing I do want to mention, though, is that, the way we're designing the system, it's less discharge. So,
Mhm.
regardless of the tide, the condition and the precondition is going to be greater than the post-condition. So you're taking a 25% reduction in the discharge into the creek,
Mhm.
which means there's more capacity in the creek, even though, again, 25% off of this project doesn't solve Port Orange's problem, but it's a project that's contributing less than its existing condition, which is the pasture and the way it sits now. But I'll let Harry maybe speak to the details a little better. That's my layman's understanding of it. But-
Yeah, I'm not clear on how that happens.
Harry Newkirk Engineering, 1230 North US Highway 1, Ormond Beach. Thank you for your question. The stormwater system that we're proposing on this subdivision follows sort of the new rules of where we're headed in stormwater. It's going from Tallahassee to all the water management districts throughout Florida with respect to systems that have more stormwater on them to do two things: to solve flooding problems off-site, which people are experiencing in, say, Spruce Creek. The Spruce Creek Canal has a certain amount of capacity, and looking at designing sites that help alleviate that and provide more capacity within those downstream discharge nodes, which in this case is Spruce Creek. So, how do you do that? And how do you accomplish the goals of the environmentalists that are worried about the birds, the fish, keeping our creeks, our rivers clean for the future, trying to clean them up from basically a lot of bad stormwater design? And at the time, it was good, but there's been a lot more study on it to what needs to happen in these discharges to help with the nutrients and stuff like that. And when you hear nutrients, everyone's like, who cares about nitrogen and phosphorus? Well, the reason you care about that is because your stormwater system to solve that problem gets bigger. And the bigger we make the stormwater system, at that same time, solves the issues with flooding off the property. So if these new rules, you gotta have more stormwater. That's how I look at it. That's why everybody should like removing nutrients. It's twofold: stormwater plus save the environment with respect to animals and just water quality in general. So this system, you have every development that comes in. There was a question on fill. You have to fill developments nowadays. You go out and you do borings. They tell you where the water is. You don't just do a development right on an existing grade, or everybody will be complaining because it will flood. So you raise the grade, which during design we would figure out that is. But when we raise that grade, we can't raise that grade with no thought, no consideration to the public that's around us. We can't dam up everybody around us and cause them to flood. We have to design so their stormwater still flows into the ditches around this development and gets to the creek. And that's what we have to do. It's required by every project. So we have to do that, and the way this system will be designed, it's a treatment train, they call it. It's a new strategy where you gotta have more than one stormwater system. Here at the city, you have one. It's behind us, it's a wet pond. That doesn't work anymore. They won't let you do that. You gotta add to that. So a treatment train is, you start with like dry retention. So we'll have dry retention areas where the water will go in first. These areas usually hold about 1 foot. about 1 foot of water in there, then you'll have a weir that gets into the wet ponds. They call it like the first flush. Now, the rain that we just experienced today, that would go into these areas, it would never get into the wet pond, so it would never discharge. Just your normal rain vents up 5 inches of rain. That's pretty substantial little rains. Nothing will get into the wet ponds. It'll just stay in the dry. The dry retention is in the upland areas of the site. It goes a little higher than the wet ponds. The stormwater will percolate. It'll go into the soil. That reduces volume of water that could actually go into wet ponds. That would actually then go into the outfall ditches around the property. So you reduce volume into the ditches. It's a first maneuver in the stormwater design. This removes nitrogen. You remove nitrogen from the yards, pesticides, and people put on their residences to make their yards look really green and nice. So once it goes out of the dry and gets into the wet areas will be designed, as Joey and we stated, littoral zones. That's putting plants around the edges. You get more of a natural look. It's actually a really nice looking stormwater pond. Helps remove some more nutrients, and that water body there also is removing phosphorus. You're designing it to settle out suspended solids and whatnot, and that's another environmental thing. So when it gets into these ponds, it'll then have a control structure that we have to specifically design with a certain size pipe to reduce the water that comes off the property that gets into the ditch. And what we're saying here is we're going to reduce it by 25%. So you can look at it from a couple ways. 25% reduction in rate's how fast it comes off site. So you don't ever want to have a pipe and have so much water coming out of it that you just blow out the ditch, and now the road's gone, and we got serious erosion problems, and you're impacting people just even driving to their subdivision. So that's why you want to reduce rate. We reduce it by 25%. Volume, when you reduce volume by 25%, you then have that reduction of water that we were putting in that ditch. Now you have 25% more volume for the neighboring properties that maybe experience flooding. Well, that extra volume will allow them to have less flooding. So if they flooded by an inch, maybe they don't flood now. Maybe that property doesn't flood because we have 25% more in the ditches around the site. Maybe some other person flooded by 6 inches. Maybe it's only 2. But that's how you're solving the problems with these ditches, with the flow coming off at 25%. You're helping the neighborhood, the general surrounding areas, have more room in the ditch to move their water. It doesn't have any effect on our site with flooding. It's helping, that extra 25% will help the neighboring properties. I'll add to this, we ran stormwater models on other sites that are designed not as intense as this one, but the 25% reduction. We had ran 20 inches of rain, 24 hours. They don't flood. So it's not real. The question about flooding isn't about the new development. This development will not flood. Maybe drop 30 inches of rain on this development, won't flood. It's not going to, but the way we'll design this site with the 25% volume reduction will help surrounding properties experience less flooding if they flood in these events. If you have any questions, more details.
That answer your question?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
A lot of information.
Thanks,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman.
Thank you.
Dan?
This is one of the things I was concerned about too, and I talked to the petitioner. When you go from the dry ponds to the wet ponds, is that just a natural flow, or is there a pipe underneath those that connects the ponds?
That's a great question. So, there's typically not a pipe. So you'll have long linear dry retention ponds next to a wet pond, and you'll design a weir.
that's
The
like
weir will be
trickle
like
off.
50 feet or something like that, and water will get to that weir, and then it'll sheet flow over into the wet retention pond with no pipes.
Okay. And the ponds, like there's the pond in the middle of the development. is that gonna cross the street, or is there a pipe to get that over to the discharge area?
Great question. All of the ponds in this entire development will be tied together. So that you get the pond at the entrance, that wet pond will tie to every single wet pond. All the dry ponds will tie together, so the system's connected from every direction. Water will flow around the entire site, but it'll eventually connect into the ditch in one location.
And that leads me to the last thing, the control structure. When I read this, I'm reading control structure and I'm going, okay, is this a mechanical pump, or is this, what is this thing exactly? And the follow-up on that is, who does the maintenance on this thing? Is this gonna be deeded over to the city for the infrastructure, or does this stay as part of the HOA?
So, maintenance will be the HOA. Now, when you do permitting in St. John's River Water Management District now, you have to sign they call it a financial obligation certification, where you have to have a operation and maintenance plan. It's a whole nother report. In that report, you do engineer cost estimates to go into mowing of the site, sedimentation of pipes, and all that sort of stuff. And you got to come up with the amount of money it's going to cost per year. It's tied into the St. John's permit now, and the HOA will do that.
Is that a one-time report then, or do they have to file it every 5 years or 3 years?
Every 5 years, you have to recertify with St. John's, and you'll show them what you did, so you're in compliance with the permit.
And that's all gonna be on the HOA to do that?
The HOA will have to do
maintain
that.
And Joey Posey, and that's also, besides being a condition of the permit, it's also reflected in the easements and the legal documents that St. John's is now requiring to bind these projects. So they really can just force your hand if you don't comply, which is, for many years was a big issue. And, how do you come out, even though you have a permit, how do you come back 10 years and say, well, you should be doing X, Y, and Z when you don't have necessarily a legal right other than the original permit? Well, they've solved that problem, and the legal documents that you put in place through the HOA covenants that St. John's is now putting in, where you cannot modify them even if you want, even if you had the votes, and also the legal easements, they now are being parties to them and creating these enforcement mechanisms to where they can sue you. That's essentially what it boils down to.
Well, it personally affected my family. My daughter had a house in Summer Trees, and it flooded in both E and N Milton. And of course, what happens out there is the drainage is a responsibility of the HOA, but the HOA hadn't really done anything. And when we talked to the HOA, they're like, well, we don't know if we got room in our budget for it or not. I'm going, okay, it's your job. How does this work? So if this is the St. John's Water Management is going to have a big hammer to force the HOAs to do this, who's going to go back and educate the older HOAs that kind of forgot about this stuff?
Well, the problem is that they don't have the hammer. The hammer is for new development. It's something. And every year there's a maintenance inspection. So those are the new standards that are now being implemented as part of the approvals for the new projects. So something like Summer Tree just wasn't subject to those rules.
Right.
And for new development, you can't just within a year you just can't even ignore this anymore. You have to be on top of it. You have to address it. Otherwise, again, the hammer will come.
Okay, that's what I was curious about, because I've had it. Scott?
So curious, we mentioned 25% less water going into Spruce Creek ostensibly. But I've kind of heard it said two different ways. Is it 25% less water in terms of volume, or a 25% reduction in the flow rate that's going out, or is it both?
It's both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just heard it said different ways both times, and I think for the benefit of the audience, kind of less water actually making it out is what we're really saying, meaning that the surrounding communities would be able to take up that 25% less water, and that's less than it's currently shedding in its existing state.
That's
Is
correct.
that, okay, I just want to make sure I understood it right. And then my only other question really is for Jim. Are you going to be the one who's building the houses here? And it's really more out of curiosity than anything else? Or is
I
it-
hope so.
That's
Yeah.
well, I'm just curious. Is it
And my
as the
plan,
developer?
yeah.
Are you going to be the builder as
Yeah,
well, or
you
is the
know,
intention?
typically in bigger neighborhoods, we have to sell off part of it, but this at 113 lots is, perfect size for us. So, yeah. that's-
I love local people who are doing local stuff because,
Yeah.
like you said, we're going to run into you at the Publix and
It's a great
Winn
opportunity
Dixie or the
right there.
Walmart or wherever, and
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see that
Thanks
be the
for
case.
checking.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's it for me, sir.
Okay, thanks. I got a couple questions for Mr. Newkirk there. So when you talk about, you said I think you said 30 inches is what you ran in at
20 inches.
20 inches. We talking. Make me feel better trusting what your numbers are saying. How do you model this? How do you model 20 inches of rain
So
in a
we have there's a computer software that you utilize to do stormwater calculations, and you input all the data of your ponds, your site, how much impervious surface and whatnot, and you tell the model how many inches of rain you want to run in 24 hours, 72 hours, whatever storm events are. DOT has certain criteria, the city, St. John's. So we tell the system how, in this case, I told my engineer, hey, run it on 3 of our newer subdivisions. I'm just curious because we actually had a discussion about this before this meeting a couple weeks ago. So we ran it, so we knew the answer. So we inputted 20 inches, run it in 24 hours. And the way St. John's, the way the system runs is, it's very simplistic way is, rain comes and you, like DOT does this curve, it's like this, it's just real smooth. But St. John's has this curve that goes real, like, pops.
Mhm.
So it'll be raining and next thing you know, you're dumping 10 inches of rain in 5 minutes.
kind of like this afternoon?
Real quick. It's real, and St. John's gets it, so it dumps a lot of rain real quick and it puts a lot of strain on the stormwater system. And then you'll see the ponds do the same thing, they come up real quick. And it's a very, very, very conservative design method, and it makes the ponds jump up. And you actually get a more conservative design with this method. So with the way the rainfall is distributed in the model, but when we ran 20 inches, it flew on, it overtopped a couple ponds, but it didn't flood the site. But you got to think about when you hear something like, say, at 20 inches you overtop the pond. Everybody's overtopped the pond, and you're gonna, when you flood at that level, you want everybody to flood around the same, so the entire basin is flooding around the same, and you don't have this mountain over here. So you want, at 20 inches of rain, you want to look across and see the water around the same elevation, because then that means everyone's storing levelly.
I guess
equally.
where I want to go with this is, are you modeling against the geography, against the physical contours of that property?
Yes.
With Spruce Creek involved, with the drainage ditches, with the roads that are in there?
That's correct, yes,
Okay.
with all of it.
Right. That's cool. That's all I needed to ask.
Mr. Chairman. One
Dan.
last thing while I got you handy. So there is gonna be a stormwater system in the streets, is that correct?
In the proposed streets?
Yes.
Yes, the proposed streets will have Miami curb, be graded to sheet flow into inlets. Those inlets would then go into dry retention ponds, they'd bubble up in the dry retention ponds.
Okay, so it's not gonna be pipe going out to Airport Road?
No, absolutely.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
We'll do a driveway connection to Airport Road, and we will do drainage out in the right of way to keep the water still flowing how it should out there.
Okay.
Yes.
You good?
Yep.
Anybody else? Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to open up to public comment right now. So what we're going to do is raise your hand. We'll go one at a time. If you've raised your hand, you don't have to keep holding it up there. We'll just look around and call on you. When you come up, give your name, your address, and if you're from out of town, what state you're in. And you got 3 minutes, so they see the counter, right? They can see that in front of them?
Yes.
All right, 3 minutes per, and like I said, try to keep the comments fresh so we aren't rehashing the same ideas, just to make it a little easier. Yes, ma'am. Come on up, and then, sir, you're next.
And you
I
won't-
saw you.
You won't get an answer.
I'm sorry?
They won't get an answer.
Right. Yeah, this is public comment, so We're not looking for any kind of debate or anything here, just express your opinions. Thank you.
My name is Jan Albert, and I live at 435 Country Circle Drive East, Quiet Place. Been a Volusia County resident 45 years, a real estate appraiser for 53 with a degree in hydrology. And basically, I have seen all of every hurricane and all that have come through, and I'm not even talking about hurricanes. Where I'm going to disagree with what I've been listening to is that I have kept detailed records of the water flows every day at the creek, and they don't correspond necessarily to what falls in Port Orange. And we average 6 to 7 5-inch rains a year. I'm not talking about the 11s, the 15s, and the 20s. But these 5-inch, and we had a 5-inch, we just had a 5-inch, and I don't feel that what they're showing is enough to stop it from going into Spruce Creek. And right now we have, you know, the meander points on Spruce Creek are completely blocked right now from, we have, you know, we've had Matthew, Michael, Ian, Helene, and Milton. And that silt has not cleared any of those meander points, which is where the geology of the creek turns, you know. And so the creek is at the top right now, you know. And I live on it. I do own land on both sides of the creek. But I feel that you're going to need more in terms of, I mean, I know they talked about the dry wells, but I think you need more. You need permeable pavements, because the 2 per acre, yes, that's the overall density of the site, but putting the homes on 60 by 100 foot lots, you're concentrating, let's say they're, I don't know, what are they going to be, 1,800 square foot homes? Is that about the size? So you're not going to have much side yards. You're going to concentrate all that roof onto the site, you know. And the site is Miaka and Astatula Fine over Samsula Loam, which is a very poor permeable soil. That's why it's been farmland for all these years, you know. So I don't know whether the engineer is taking that enough into consideration, because, well, we see what happens just on these daily rains, and you're talking about a swimming pool. So if they're raising these, and they're going to have to, obviously, you're going to be flooding a lot of the area, no matter what you do. But you're going to need more of the high-tech devices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Albert.
Good afternoon. Mike Poniatowski. I live in the Tomoka Farms Village. My address is protected under Florida statute. So you're about to approve this large-scale development, changing density from 1 house per 10 acres to 2 houses per acre. This is a recipe for sure, a recipe for disaster. Currently, undeveloped land, pasture land, by the St. John's water management calculations, holds 1.5 million gallons of water for a 5-inch rain. That means this property holds about 85 million gallons of water. Now, are those ponds going to hold 85 million gallons of water? No. Water doesn't run off the site now, but it will run off when this is done. I own acreage. My land is still holding water from the storms at the beginning of August. I've had 8 inches of rain, 8 inches of water on my pasture land, and it's just now percolating into the ground. You've reviewed the site plan, you've listened to these experts, and you know what? They're doing whatever the regulations say they need to do. They're good to go, so approve the site. Not really, because the math is wrong. The math hasn't changed in decades. What's changed is the amount of development that these commissions approve. It's building, building, building. And all that stormwater has to go somewhere. And where does it go? To Spruce Creek. Spruce Creek hasn't been maintained in about 40 years. All the water that goes into Spruce Creek gets held, and it becomes tailwater. And that tailwater is the flooding that you see every day with rains of 2 to 3 inches. Today we had about a 3-inch rain, and you all drove through roads that were probably flooded. You probably have flooding in your subdivisions, because that's what happens. The development does not allow the stormwater to be held on that property anymore. And these ponds are not going to hold 87 million gallons of water. I guarantee that. It's going to flow out into the creek. It's going to pollute the creek, and it's going to become tailwater and flood all of the subdivisions around it, because that's what's happening today. You see it. You see it in the media. You listen to people talk about it, and it's destroying our homes. Now, I want to be able to give my home to my kids. Well, when you guys approved the Westport subdivision, my home is now flooded in the county twice. My neighbors 3 times, for the tunes of tens of millions of dollars worth of damage. And that water flows from the Westport subdivision. They said they had ponds to hold the water. It does not hold the water. It comes through my property and my neighbor's property. Because that's the reality. We see the reality, even though, you know what, these are respectable gentlemen. They're professionals. But the math does not add up. The water is going to flood the homes adjacent to it, and then we're left holding the bag or the tailwater because we pay for it. Not insurance, not the city, not this commission, not anybody. Not even our homeowners insurance. Flood insurance may give you a little bit. So that's why you need to say no to this subdivision, because we can't afford the water. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Mike, can I get a spelling of your last name?
Yeah.
Yeah, P-O-N.
Yes, sir.
T-O-W-S-K-I.
Yes, my name is Vincent Mangano. I live at 790 Airport Road, which is next door to this subdivision. My pasture got rain last week, 5 inches. I got to mow 7 days later to wait for it to perk. I just built a brand new house on this 6 acres. I brought it up to what the standard to make my septic tank flow. Now they're gonna bring a subdivision in next door, raise the property. They won't give me an elevation. I know where my elevation is, but they won't give me any idea what height they're gonna be. If they come up 3-4 feet, my house will be underwater. If my water cannot flow through that pasture, when it flooded out of Water's Edge from Ian, the water came through my whole property 12 to 18 inches deep and flowed through that pasture to the creek. It's always done that. There's a major ditch on my property when that property was 250 acres of a dairy farm. So there's a big swale that goes from the back of my yard all the way to Charles Street. That is what drains the back of my property, besides the ditches that flow to the road. During Ian, the road, all the ditches, 3 ditches that drain my property to the canal, to the ditch, flowed out of there and ran through my property as the water flew out of Water's Edge. My concern is my property. Am I gonna be in wetlands now when this happens? Who's gonna pay for the destruction of my property? You know, I'm just concerned about that. And the road runs up and down my north side of my property. I gotta look at those people and wave to them every day. I don't want to look at those people. I don't want to see nobody. That's why we moved there. We've been there for 37 years. And 4 years ago, we built our house that we dreamed of. And now I'm sitting there wondering what's going to happen in my golden years. You know, I've got many other concerns, but that's pretty much priority. Everybody knows that. And that's all I'm here for. Just protect what I have. That's all I ask.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Father Victor Lopez, 2156 Springwater Lane, Port Orange. I'm going to object to the plan that they have, starting on page 15. According to the city's comprehensive
Which
plan.
page 15 of which document, sir?
Oh,
Just
this is the staff report on
But-
page 15.
But we opened 2
Staff
documents.
report that
There's
was
two,
published.
there's 2 staff reports.
Well,
Yeah, we have 2 projects.
Is this the, look at the title, is this the master development?
Can you tell us what the number on the front is?
What's the number at the top
the
there?
number on the front is CPAM 250001 on page 15. Basically, it says, according to the city's comprehensive plan and land development code, a property must be able to manage the stormwater or the subjected property after development as it does prior to development or in its current undeveloped state. When they're doing all of these modelings and everything else, They are looking specifically just at this piece. What you don't realize is that property is also part of the surge area for Spruce Creek. When we have hurricanes and heavy waters, that creek overflows. This is the last hurricane. This is that property that you're now looking to develop. Okay? They're going to build it up. They're going to push that water someplace else. That's going to go into the creek, into other people's property. That's in direct conflict with what your code was. Also, you state in your goals, objectives, and policies of the city comprehensive plan that any changes that you make does not adversely impact water quality and quantity or increase the potential of flooding. Well, as you've heard, it's going to increase the potential of flooding. There are a bunch of single wide trailers that are just adjacent to this property. That water, if it's not going into this farmland, is going to go into their homes. The people who are least able to afford it.
Thank you.
Okay? That's my big objection. Also, the quality of the water. As you know, Spruce Creek is under the OFC, and it cannot have any contaminants going into it. Their plan, with all of their retention ponds and everything else, we did the models. Gee, it's not going to go under, normal conditions, but nothing, no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, bleaches, or anything else can be put into Spruce Creek. They have not accounted for that, and they can't account for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Sharino, 3724 Lisa Lane, New Smyrna Beach. I live in one of those cardboard houses, okay? Half of the people on the street are 60 and above. We all got hit by Ian. Some people are just devastated, never recovered, just lost everything. I don't know if you're familiar with mobile homes, but they have cardboard floors, okay? They get wet. You can't just tear out the sheetrock 6 inches and put in new. You gotta do the whole thing. There's no insurance for any of these mobile homes at all. Flood, regular. It's all on the fly now, okay? You just can't do it. And they're putting the retention ponds at the top of Lisa and Lacey Lane where they are, and you just heard from their engineer stating that their ponds will overflow, but it won't flow their development. Where do you think you're going to go? Go down Lisa Lane tomorrow and look at Spruce Creek and see that it's a foot away and it's 14 feet down, okay? Where's it going to go? And if their little bit overflows into our street, we're going to get it from Spruce Creek coming up, and we're going to get it from them giving it to us. You make the decision. You got to live with it. You may be only, granted you don't get paid or anything else, but you still got to have some, dignity. The bottom word. This whole state is getting flooded. And they're just building more. They just built all that project off of Pioneer Trail, and those houses may look pretty as you go by, but you look right through them because not one of them is sold. And you know what? And the people that are going in there buying them, they're looking to the left of it where the go-kart place is and seeing the swamp and saying, my house is built on this. It's only common sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Who else? Come on up.
Go ahead.
One of you.
Good evening. My name is Jay Schaefer. I live in Spruce Creek, Fly In. What I heard out of these guys here are a lot of nevers, maybes, hope, and nothing guaranteed by them. And what I learned through education, never, always are bad words to use whenever you're doing a presentation, because they're not the truth. I do believe they're hiding behind a curtain to get this development through. They're hiding numbers, they're changing numbers, and they'll try and convince you all that they know what they're doing. It's obvious if we continue to keep building, we're going to put the plug in the drain. And the drain is going to quit functioning. We're going to back up, and we're going to have an entire lake in southeast Volusia County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Young man in the back.
My name is Gary Singleton. I live at 1998 Spruce Creek Circle in Spruce Creek Farms. Last night I attended a meeting and I learned that the designs for stormwater systems, if they're fully compliant with the state, that they are presumed to be adequate. I have a few questions. Do you follow up to ensure that the designs are working as promised? Are you going to follow up and confirm that there is actually less runoff post-development than there was pre-development? Are there consequences for failing to fulfill the promises that are being made today? Are there consequences for producing more runoff that floods neighboring properties? We have the engineering calculations, and we also have our own eyes. And there are examples throughout this county where you can go and you can watch stormwater flow from recent developments into the homes of surrounding neighbors. And there doesn't seem to be any consequences out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get somebody who hasn't been up yet. Go ahead, sir.
Please bear with me, I'm very nervous. My name is David Gall, I live in Spruce Creek, Fly-In. I've got some haphazard notes here. First off, I note that Mr. Paytas at his company meeting last week mentioned that he's been driving past this property for over 30 years. I can't imagine why a developer wouldn't jump on a property after 30 years, except that he had already determined that it was not a good investment or a viable development for those 30 years. And now he's running out of land to address, so he's going after what's left. What's left is a piece of land that's been underneath the flyway for the Spruce Creek Airport, which was a PUD developed in 1978. You heard testimony tonight that this has been farmland since 1978. There's good reason for that. Spruce Creek Airport is one of the busiest private airports in the world. We run about 33,000 operations per year. On a weekend, we'll have about 160 operations. And that particular piece of land that they're targeting to build these 113 homes on is the specific point that every arriving airplane aims for to join the traffic pattern for the Spruce Creek Airport. It's also, as you've heard testified tonight, it's the headwaters of the Spruce Creek, and it is the overflow drain for when the Spruce Creek backs up. So it's served two purposes since 1978, documented, and you're about to violate those two purposes if you approve this development. I don't know what your remedy will be when it doesn't work out the way you anticipate, but I can promise you that you will have the effects that are being testified here by the citizens tonight. If you go forward with this development, I would ask that you require the developer to require a covenant of every purchaser of these properties that they will never be allowed to complain about airplane noise, so that you can protect that modality of transportation, which is also recognized by the Department of Transportation, called aviation. You've taken care of car transportation with your traffic studies. You need to take care of aerial transportation and protect that flyway also. Additionally, I know that your staff study only looked at adjacent city properties for your density. They failed to look at the Bauman property, which is 1 unit per acre. or the property to the south of this proposed development, which is 1 unit per 5 acres. And so when they say 2 units per acre is commensurate with neighboring developments, they're only looking north and east, not south and west. I have more to say, but I see my time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gall. Yes, sir.
Just gotta ask one quick question. Why can't the developers put some kind of bond in place protecting us? Like if these mobile homes do flood out, why can't they come in, buy us out, and they can elevate, build up as high as they want, and develop it then? Why isn't there a simple 30-year bond that would protect us so we could sleep at night?
Got it. Anyone else? Oh, there you go.
Hi, I'm Paul Holmes, and I live in Spruce Creek, and I took some notes about what they were saying before, and I do agree. It's a well-designed project. It's just in the wrong place. It's in the wrong place. This is a lake that forms every time we have a hurricane. That's what it looked like at 2 o'clock today. This is the property. This is the back of Spruce Creek. And this is what it looks like in every hurricane. It's a lake. It goes back 2,000 feet as a lake. And it's where our water overflows that little berm, and that's the only way we have during a hurricane to get rid of our water. If you trap us in, you are going to flood one of your highest paying areas in real estate taxes. Spruce Creek is it, folks. If anyone in this room believes you can build up farmland, pave it, and put over 100 houses on it, and after that put out 25% less water on the surrounding areas during a hurricane, I think we're all being very gullible here. If we actually believe that, like if we, in our heart, if we actually believe that that's possible. Well, you caught Spruce Creek by surprise. This annex thing that was done, which I think is very shady, you're annexing in Volusia County property, making it into your town's property, and then you're shedding the water back into the 3 portions of Volusia County that surround Port Orange. I think it's very unfair. The Spruce Creek POA has now gotten organized. The Property Owners Association has already, in the last 2 months, raised $350,000, and we're going to be well on our way to $1 million. We're going to fight this, and we're going to hire lawyers, engineering firms, surveyors, advertising agencies, and forensic accountants to find out where the money is going and where is it coming from. We're going to do this to make sure that the public knows what is going on here. We're going to use QR codes. It's so simple. Thank God we have modern science. If you hold up these QR codes, we can put these everywhere in this town. We're going to have them hanging from banners that fly over these properties. We're going to have them on the 2,000 feet of southern border, showing all the prospects that want to buy that property. We're going to have those QR codes, and we're going to have hours and hours of the truth. We're always going to tell the truth. I promise never to lie. I promise to only show the damage it can do, show the flooding. We've got thousands of pictures like this, and we're going to tell the truth, and it might end up as
Thanks, sir.
Payas's.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
I hope it doesn't.
What's up? Oh, I thought.
You have somebody over here who hasn't been.
Do I? Where was?
Go. They're only supposed to.
Couldn't
vote
see in the
once.
corner, sorry.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm a little nervous myself. I'm Lisa Haymans, and I live in Spruce Creek. As a history lover and stuff, I've learned that this is a very rich archaeological area as well. If something is to be found, has it been scanned first, and is there a plan in action if something is found while developing? Because this makes me very nervous that we're destroying more of our history.
environmental survey.
It's public comment, so we can't.
Yeah, we
answer
are.
that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's,
Forgive me.
you're
No,
fine,
you're
you're
I just
fine.
want to put it out
No,
there.
you're-
Yes,
you're-
you're
Something
good.
about that.
Thank you.
I'm sure the applicant would love to talk to you afterwards. Anybody else back here? Trying to get new folks. Nice shirt.
Appreciate it. Didn't have it more formal. Do apologize. My name is Eric Johnson. I live on 2136 Springwater Lane. I'm in Spruce Creek with the rest of them. But I do live on the southern border. So the elevation change is my primary concern with the development, and I would ask the board, please limit what they can build up due to the flood issues that we are seeing, both as the fairway for our community, but also for the communities surrounding us. That pasture has acted as a filter for taking the floodwaters from Ian, Milton, and every other high rain event that we've had in the past 20 years that have been major events. Any elevation change that I didn't see discussed in the plans this evening make a major difference on what the rest of the communities are. So if there's a development plan that can be done to be looking at this whole picture, not just the pasture, for how those waters are acted, that would be my main concern, and I would hope the board would maybe take a pause to consider those actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Johnson. Yes, sir.
My name is Matthew Fitch. I live next to the planned development there off Charles Street. They talk about they did where the water level is. They did in the dry season. You go out there now in the last 2 months, you go see where your water level is now. Then during Ian and Milton, the water come across us too and flooded my grandma's house. When they build that up, it's gonna stop at us, then it's gonna form around us and then have to get around their development. But not only that, Spruce Creek, it drains all Samsula from Lake Ashby all the way to where it dumps out into Halifax. That's the only means of drainage through Samsula, Lake Ashby. It all comes down through there around us. So they talk about they're gonna build it up, so it's gonna affect the rest of us and continue to circle around us and flood us. They'll be fine, them houses in there. But you don't take into consideration for all the runoff, them cars that drip oil, leak gas, bring the pollutants off the road into that development, it's gonna go through their thing and get clean, but it's not all gonna clean it, then it's gonna go into Spruce Creek. So, it's just, then you got people that lived out there, that's been a dairy farm since the late 40s. So, then you got people that move out there for the scenery. I've grown up there, I'm 34. Seen it all, just cows and pasture land. You're gonna put a house in there, you're not gonna see the sunset no more. They're gonna rip down all the trees that surround that. There'll be no cows in there no more. So it's a way of life for a lot of us, so it's gonna take away beautiful scenery just for somebody to line their pockets, like Peta said, a lot grab. So, just in it for the money.
Thank you. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Anybody wants to speak?
No one's supposed to come up next.
Didn't miss anybody around the corner there?
No.
All right, I've already had you up, sir. We're good. Anybody else? Last call. All right, public comment is completed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. By the way, not related to this particular issue, but we have a position open on the planning commission here, so you could be up here helping us out. All right, bring it back to the commission here for commissioner comments. Stan, I'll start with you.
I guess what I was just gonna ask the attorney, our attorney, is that, you know, just to reiterate what we're trying to do here. So the petitioner is asking us to change the zoning, and does Port Orange have anything similar to what the Volusia County zonings were? You may not know that. It might be a Tim or Penny question.
Shelby Cruz, planning. So there's two things that the applicant's asking to do to change the future land use designation.
Right.
And then to do the rezoning. We have an agriculture preservation category, which is like 1 unit per 10, but this also has 2 categories on it. It also has a density on it that allows 4 units per acre. So they're asking for 2 units per acre. We do have those other categories, but we have to process what the property
Right,
owner is
exactly.
requesting.
That's, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure, because it kind of came up with, well, they're changing the zoning, and that was part of the whole issue. In order to be able to build houses here, is you had to change the zoning to get the.
Well, when you annex property, Florida statutes requires you to put a city designation
Right.
on the property so that you can have full jurisdiction on the property. It doesn't stop at annexation.
And this is the first time that the city has designated any zoning on that particular piece of property, is that correct?
We haven't designated anything yet.
But I mean, this is the first action, because it's.
Yeah,
this
it just got annexed in June.
I was gonna say,
So
this
the
was
next
just
step is
relatively
to,
recently.
the next step is for them to apply to change the future land use and the zoning, and so that's where in those next 2 steps.
Right,
Mhm.
okay.
Let me pause you, because I didn't see Joey stand. He had some things he needed to fill in here, some of the comments, I believe.
I appreciate it. Joey Posey, 420 South Nova. And I appreciate the comments that I heard. There's a few things that I know we addressed during the presentation, but I do want to reiterate. Again, we're talking about 25% less discharge. That's the key here. I saw some pictures, of flooding on the property, et cetera. Look, that's the existing condition, what action happens here or not. And the question is how do we address that condition? And what we're representing, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is that it's 25% less discharge, and the site's being designed to actually have a management of the stormwater. And I just spoke to the client. He has no problem putting a bond in place for the HOA to ensure that maintenance continues. It's not something we're looking to avoid. It's something that the standards of St. John's are moving towards, that, making sure that those future issues don't happen and that there's an accountability. So again, if the reinsurance that, our engineer just botched it completely and that the site is compromised in some way, stormwater, we're happy to do a maintenance bond for stormwater, for the project stormwater system. That's not a problem. The other thing I want to mention too is that, sometimes pictures can be misleading. I do recall seeing a picture pretty recently from Jim that actually showed the water discharging from this site into that stormwater pond that the gentleman from Spruce Creek Flying was mentioning. So, I'm not here to say which way the water flows, doesn't flow, but what I'm trying to accomplish here is how do we do an incremental step to solve a problem, which is making sure that discharge rate is less into the creek, that there's actual stormwater capacity on the project to accept all of the existing stormwater that's shedding to it, which would include the neighbor's property. We do not want to flood him either. There is that existing ditch there. We're not looking to compromise that ditch to where it's a problem for him in any way, and that's the stormwater system has to contemplate that too. The covenant for just to be clear, the covenant for the flight routes, and that there won't be any complaints. We're happy to do that. That was something mentioned in passing in the presentation. We also have to do an environmental study. Again, it's like I think one of the gentlemen mentioned, it's a dairy farm since the 40s. I can't imagine there's something out there, but you still got to go through the exercise. And the trees are staying. I mentioned that in passing too, that this is a cleared pasture. It's not a forested piece of land that has wetlands. It just isn't that. I understand some of the issue or the perceived issue from the neighbors, and what the fear of the unknown is. But in terms of what it is, it's a pasture. And we've already represented that we have no plans to impact the specimen trees on the site. We're keeping those pockets of vegetation, that it makes sense since it's along the road and can already provide for that vegetative buffer. So outside of that, I do understand where they're coming from, and I want to try to address problems. I've only had 3 calls at the office, to just have a conversation about this project, which they're all cordial. It's just it's always an open invitation to have that discussion. So other than that, again, we're available to answer any specific questions that come out through deliberation, but I do at least want those points to be clear that whatever motion is made, we're happy to add that condition because we're confident in our design. But if there's any other feedback or questions that we can address, we're here and we're happy to help.
Thank you, sir. All right, Stan, you were speaking there.
Well, I
Anything else?
was asking, just to be clear, that we're really, this isn't a go or no-go. This is, are we gonna zone and are we gonna look at this master development plan? I mean, we couldn't say, no, nobody can build on this property. That's not our job, is that correct?
No, we're only voting on changing the land use, and we're only voting on changing zoning.
Right, just wanna make that clear.
City land use and city zone.
Exactly.
Right.
But you're right, we can't say no. We can't
Right.
prohibit anybody from building on that.
Scott.
First, I'd like to address everybody who's sitting out there. If you think for a minute that you're not heard, think again. I got pages of notes over here because y'all brought up some things I hadn't considered. I'm going to be honest with you. We read these reports just like you guys had the opportunity to, and we try to draw our conclusions based on what we see. But we also need to hear when you come up and say, I have a mobile home that's close by and I'm concerned about flooding. I have a ditch that's going through that property and the water drains through there. How are we going to be addressing it? And it is on us to ask those questions of the developer and of the attorneys and to get them to come up and propose responses. I've been impressed with the responses that we've seen. I know that it is not going to cover everyone's concern. I completely understand that. I'm also a pilot, so I have flown over that property. I'm aware of how it's used for inbound traffic. I'm a neighbor. I'm a real estate agent, and I believe in people's property rights. Yours as existing homeowners and the rights of the people who are purchasing property you want to build. This is a challenging thing, I think, for all of us to listen to this and to see what's coming forward. Projects like this are going to happen. The best thing that we can do is listen and try to propose or to accept the best projects that come our way and then give our advice up to commission and the council to say, this is what we think is the best answer. Your developer is a local. I've known him for a long time. If he's going to be the one who's building this, I believe that he's going to stand up to what he says he's going to do. And I think he's going to do his best to protect the property that's around him. Build up is required. That is just the new code. If you're going to build a house, they're going to make you build up to a higher elevation. I think they're doing their best that they can to try to sustain what's going on around you. And I believe that development is going to happen here. So I just want you guys to know you're heard. There's not anybody sitting on this board that's not going, you guys don't matter. You do. Somebody brought up money. If somebody's giving somebody money, please tell me where I get mine, because no one has ever come up and said, we're going to give you some money for making a decision here. We sit here and make difficult decisions based on being citizens and your neighbors. So this is difficult for all of us every time one of these comes our way. And we take it very seriously. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that. Thank you for the presentations and thank you all for your comments.
Thank you, Scott. Bo.
Ditto Scott's remarks. I appreciate that. I do have one question for Joey, if I can. The bond that you mentioned. Explain how that would work.
Well, it would be simply that there'd be an assessment of the maintenance responsibility costs, how much it costs to do annual improvement, etc. And my conceptualization of it is that the city would be probably a party to it in some respects, so they're aware of what's going on, and that the HOA has to maintain those stormwater areas consistent with the permitting and the as-built as designed. And if they don't, there's an enforcement mechanism. You act on the bond, somebody pulls the money out, becomes responsibility of those folks who are negligent, and the improvement happens. There's no debate over who's responsible, when they're responsible, how do we get the money out of them. It's something that would go and it would follow the development, and as it ages, I would hope encourage folks to do what they're supposed to do, rather than having to go to that option. And that's and again, that's the assurance we're trying to create. That we don't want a situation like Summer Tree where, you know, folks come and go, people forget what's happening, HOAs change, you know, but there's never any obligation or consistency that follows. And that's what a bond can do. A bond can keep it to where there's an enforcement mechanism through the governing agencies that the HOA has to act, or if they don't choose to, somebody's going to act for them. And there's money put aside to make sure that that happens.
Okay. The other question is, the assertion that there'll be a 25% reduction in, how do we know that? I mean, in conclusion, we say this development goes in and we don't have a 25% reduction. I mean, what, I really don't understand that, you know.
Well, again, I can have the engineer speak to the specifics, but the as designed, it has to function that way.
Right.
If it doesn't, then it's a failure of the design, that it wasn't designed to the appropriate standard.
But do we know that with a 25% reduction, that there's going to be no impact on the surrounding areas?
I think to maybe recategorize, or maybe rephrase that makes it easier.
I mean,
you
it'd be clear
have
on
an
that.
existing condition, which is the water sheets in all directions in its current way as the property flows.
Right.
Our obligation is to ensure that our design at the 100-year stormwater standard also has a 25% reduction into the discharge off Site 2. So we're obligated to make the situation better. We have to. That's verbatim in the PD.
Okay. Thank you.
Otherwise, we violated the PD.
Yeah.
It's a breach of contract.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Is that all you got, folks?
Yeah, that's all I got.
Mario, your thoughts?
Lots of thoughts. First of all, I joined this board to stop developments like this, because if it were up to me, every piece of empty property in Port Orange, or heck, even Volusia County, I would be perfectly happy if they were all turned into parks. But that is not feasible.
You gonna turn your house back into a park?
I would love to turn my house. Actually, you don't want to know what I did on that property as a teenager. So let's go back there. However, it's just not feasible. Legally, it's not feasible, and it's just not realistic. Unfortunately. I've lived in Port Orange my entire life. I now live in Water's Edge. And you have to realize that if you're getting water from Water's Edge, that I've lived there for 14 years. I don't even remember when that development was built, but you have completely different things to abide by now than you did there from a stormwater perspective and an engineering perspective. Hurricane, building, the whole 9 yards. I mean, things are vastly different. And projects like this, like Scott said, they're gonna happen, unfortunately. If it's not this one, it'll be another one. We'll be sitting here again. So what we have to do as a board is we have to evaluate with our brains and our hearts what's the best option. And as you can see, we've reduced how many homes are going to be there already, and that helps. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Can we 110% say they're going to retain 25% less? No, you don't know. We could have some superstorm and we will never know. But the fact that Paytas is going above and beyond what's required of him to try to help that situation, that's what we have to think about. Because the next developer that comes along may not. And I'll tell you, I've been sitting on this board probably 10 years, and most developers don't. They don't care that you want better stormwater, 25% or whatever the case may be. So the fact that he cares means a lot to us as a board. And at the end of the day, for me, Penny's one of the smartest people I know. And I have to trust the staff that they've done their due diligence to make sure that Paytas does his due diligence. And that's where we are, unfortunately. That's all I got.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. Yeah, when I saw this coming forward, it was like, oh man, because I don't want anybody's house to flood. I really don't. I want my house to flood. I don't. Mr. Fitch,
Internal battle.
over there? I don't want anybody's house to flood. But as we were talking earlier, sir, we're done with public comment. Thanks. this is, we have to deal in the facts here. We have to look at what the numbers say. And two of the things that I always looked at is the traffic and water. And I would hear traffic counts come forward and they'd read off how many daily trips and how many in the morning, how many in the afternoon, and I'd sit there and go, that is just full of crap. There's no way that that's all the cars they have on that road. And so I would sit in Tim's office. I went over there, I would sit for hours, and we would look at traffic numbers for all these different roads, real traffic numbers, counts, and then we'd look at the traffic flow, because when we get these reports, you'll see that if they're going to put in Dutch Brothers Coffee Shop at the corner of Taylor and Dunlawton, right? They'll show you how many cars are going to come to and from that location, all the way out to Ridgewood and up 95 and down 95 and over into the Flying. And I still didn't believe it. I said, you're full of crap. These numbers are just made up. There's no way this could be right. So I found a third independent source that had a traffic system. You could run your own traffic pattern flow reports. Said, this looks cool. I'll prove these guys are wrong. Sure enough, it was all right. All the numbers came just like they said. And that's why they've got the traffic manual. There's a traffic manual that's been around for decades. It says, if you've got a coffee shop going in a location, here's how many trips you're going to get in and out. Now, I don't know water hydrology, I guess is the term. I don't know how water flows. We all look at it and we go, that's downhill. That's where the creek is. It's going to flow out to the river, and it's got to get somewhere. And if we put more houses in, it's going to put more water into it. We all look at it and go, this is where the water's going to go. I don't know what happens when you put a house on a piece of property. I don't know what happens when you put 113 houses on the property if you put in all these retention ponds and the detention ponds. I'm working off the numbers. I have to go off the numbers that the engineers give us and say, here's how it's going to work. And that's what we've got to face up here. And based on the numbers, he says they're going to have 25% less than what's already on that property and 25% less outflow in terms of velocity, speed, whatever it might be. On the other hand, I got to look at the other things. From the good side, he's got sidewalk going in on both sides of the streets. And I have been a proponent of that forever. If you aren't putting
Especially
sidewalks
school
in a
across the
subdivision, that's just not right. And he's not coming back and asking for a variance on sidewalks. He's not asking for a variance on trees. He's keeping all the specimen trees, and that's one of our biggest things here. He's not asking for any variance or any deviation from what the normal land use and the normal zoning would be, and those are all good things. So I like that. That's it. That was it. Those are the things I've got going on. So anybody else got a comment up here? That's all my ideas. I don't know. Let's see. If no other comments, we'll go ahead and assume you're ready to vote on. We'll do each one separately, but we'll do a vote right one after the other.
Mr. Chair, question?
Yes, ma'am.
With the addition of the bond
No, that's not
that
in
Mr.
there.
Paytas is going to do we need to add that in somewhere? Because we've learned our lesson with that in the past. So we don't want any lesson learning. We want to make sure the bond is in there, if that's what we're going to
Penelope
do.
Cruz Planning, if the applicant is stating that they are committing to that and making that a requirement, then I suggest that you amend your motion for the second item, for the master development agreement, that they add that requirement into the master development agreement prior to this item being scheduled for city council.
And also the representations and stipulations in the PowerPoint, because those are not also on your step report, the ones that spoke to the flight path.
Regarding your covenants?
Correct.
If they want to add that in, again, there's a section in the MDA that speaks to covenants and restrictions and
Yes,
things like
yes.
that. So if that is the pleasure of the board, they are committing to do that. If it is your pleasure that you want them to make that required language in their master development agreement that they have to commit to, then you would amend your motion for your MDA that that language be added and reviewed by staff, and may ensure that it's there prior to this item going to city council.
How much and how long?
Covenant and bond.
Do you want to make that motion there?
Well, why don't we do the first one?
Oh, that's a good
Like,
idea,
no.
thanks. Yeah, okay, so we'll do the first case, because that's, the rest of it is in the second one. We have a motion and a second on this particular issue, so we'll be voting on the land large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, which is CPAM-25-0001. Clerk, if you call the roll on that one?
Do I still call him?
Yeah, you have to.
Stan Schmidt,
As previously stated, I must abstain.
Scott Stager,
Yes.
Daniel Mallow, Maria Mills-Benning,
Yes.
Will Bohaney,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes. All right, 4-0 then. That passes. All right, so we're moving on to the rezoning, the PUD rezoning case, which is PRZA-25-0003. We have a motion and we do have a second. Do you want to try and make a motion to?
So we need to amend the motion for case number PRZA-25-003 to add the covenant and the bond to be reviewed by staff before the next council meeting
And add it as required
and
language.
add it as a required language.
You
Is
need
that
a
right?
motion to amend.
That's an motion to amend.
I'll second the motion to amend.
That's what she said, right?
As long as your terms are gonna work with the legal people, I will second your amendment.
Amended motion?
Right. So now we vote on the amendments.
But can you second?
Yeah,
Because
well,
He
okay.
made the second on your,
Oh, okay.
no, you made the second on.
Scott.
Right, I was
Scott
saying,
did.
and I will second, but I have a question for
Are you
discussion.
good with what she said?
So you're strictly, your motion is
So we're
strictly to
amending the
amend.
motion.
Yeah, the motion was to approve, and now she's amending it to add
The bond.
That's what I'm
maintenance
saying,
bond.
you're saying, I think we're saying two different things. You're trying to do an amended motion, and I think first we're just motioning, you gotta get a consensus to amend the motion.
That's what
You
she's
wanted to
asking
say,
for.
make a motion to amend and add required language.
Yeah.
I thought that's what I was doing, was getting
And
consensus
then you're
to
gonna
amend.
amend your motion, then you'll amend it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
Yeah,
need,
that's 2 steps.
Yes.
yeah, oh,
Yeah.
2 steps, not 1, got it.
That, yeah.
So I need a vote to amend the motion,
Right.
to add the bond and the covenant.
No,
for-
just
You're making a
Motion to
motion to amend your motion.
A motion to amend my motion. Okay, got it.
Okay,
I'm
second.
not adding that yet.
And then you're
I
second.
will second that.
Okay.
He'll second
Okay,
that. All right.
now we vote.
We all
Got
good?
it.
Go ahead, call the roll on the
Sorry,
motion.
folks,
to
procedures.
Amend?
Stan Schmidt,
Again, I must abstain.
Scott Stager,
Yes.
Maria Mills-Benning,
Yes.
Will Bohaney,
Yes.
Thomas Jordan.
Yes, all right, so motion
Okay.
is approved to amend it. You want to read out what you want to amend it
Now,
as?
motion to approve case number PRZA-25-0003, adding the covenant and the bond to be reviewed by staff before the next city council meeting.
I will second for discussion. I have a question.
She didn't put any required language in. Doing the
And
add-
add, yes, as required language.
And add, okay. Very good. Is that good?
Yes. Second, but I have a question for discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Should we have an amount and a time frame on the bond? Would the bond be perpetual, and does there need to be an amount that's commensurate with the maintenance costs or something along those lines specifically?
Doesn't the bond already automatically have a time frame?
And I'm not familiar, that's why I'm asking the
Maybe
question.
Joey can answer that.
Well, the amount I can't
Yeah.
specify, but I can say that it's based on the engineer's estimate for the cost of the improvements, the ongoing maintenance, and the overall life of the project. That I think that we just talked briefly that 30 years is probably the
Useful life?
Right.
I was gonna say, I thought they were
Yeah.
typically about 30 years. so-
And I had no idea, that's why I asked the question.
Right.
And we've done these before, where staff understands the intention here, and they can work out the details with legal and.
I'm good with that. I thought I heard someone from the audience ask the question. I want to make sure we're clear.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right, you made the motion, did you second it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Roll call on amending the original motion, right?
No, this is the.
No, this is
No, I'm sorry,
actual-
the amended motion, thanks.
Yes.
Stan Schmidt,
I again have to abstain.
Scott Stager,
Yes.
Mary Muscadine,
Yes.
Bobo Van,
Yes.
Tom Short.
Yes, motion carries. I got any more votes on that one? You good? All right, all right, good. All righty, gang, thanks, everybody. We suspect you're all leaving, you don't want to stay around and hang out for one more
We'll give you a
issue?
minute to disperse.
We're gonna take a short intermission then while y'all clear out. If you want to talk to the applicant or the attorneys, grab them out there and let them know and reach out to them.
Man, that one was an eternal battle.
Yeah. But I think that was the first one where I actually felt like I needed to really do some studying and homework and understanding of this.
Because we haven't had a subdivision for a long time.
No, and honestly, I could use another 2 weeks after this because there were a lot of discussion questions that I'd really like to.
Well, yeah, last, this public item agenda on the agenda here is a request for a land development code text amendment updates. Sir, I thought you were gonna stay. Oh, yeah, okay. This is to amend chapter 9 of the land development code as part of an effort to update the land development code.
Motion to approve case number DCAM-25-0004, LDC text amendment, chapter 9.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and we have a
Oh, you're
second. We got that from Stan? Penny.
Hi, good evening, Penelope Cruz Planning. So the proposed amendments to the land development code are related to water-dependent uses such as marinas and residential docks and boathouses. And as part of our ongoing LDC maintenance effort, as you know, we try to bring forth a few amendments to kind of slowly just clean up the code as we can throughout the year. So they're intended to improve and update the LDC as it responds to these residential and commercial docks. So the first item in the packet is regarding a terminal platform for a residential dock, and it's currently limited to a maximum width of 8 feet in area and not to exceed 160 square feet. If the board recalls, there was a variance back in last year in 2024, and staff noted that the city's regulations for these residential terminal dock platforms hadn't been updated in over 30 years, and we were actually directed by the Planning Commission to go back and kind of evaluate our existing codes with regards to this. And seeing if an amendment was warranted, and so that's why we're here before you tonight with these amendments. And that kind of direction applies to all the rest of them that are coming. Is that variance included, request included a variance for multiple features of residential dock requirements, and in all those cases, our requirements hadn't been updated in over 30 years, and we were asked to take a look at that, compare what other cities' requirements are, and if needed, bring back an amendment, which is why we're here before you tonight. So upon comparison of those current requirements from the neighboring jurisdictions, staff did find that our regulations appear to be outdated and could be revised to reflect advancements in marine equipment, modern construction materials, boater and resident safety, larger boat sizes, and to provide more functional space for homeowners to place outdoor furniture, safely maneuver around their dock to better align with modern practices. So you can see the table that's on the presentation as well as in your packet, that other jurisdictions and FDOT allow residential terminal platforms that range in size from the 180 square feet to up to 1,000 square feet with no restriction on the width of the terminal dock platform. So the proposed amendment before you is to change the city requirement to remove that 8-foot width restriction and to increase the maximum allowable area to 500 square feet to align with those standards of adjacent cities and the current FDEP standards.
Cool.
Okay. The next one is regarding residential boathouse height. Currently, we allow a height of 12 feet above the water level at the mean high water line. Similarly, this was part of that variance request in 2024. We looked back at some of, what the other standards are, and again found that our standards to be out of date and in need of update. So comparing that, other cities allow a maximum boat height that range from about 15 feet to 18 feet. So this proposed amendment would change our maximum height to that 18-foot height to kind of align with those other adjacent cities. And the intent of that is to better accommodate the larger boat sizes that we're seeing, modern boat lifts, boat equipment features, and to respond to rising tides and water levels, which are expected to continue to increase in the future. The next one with regards to residential docks is setback requirement. So our code right now has had only a setback for residential docks for properties that are 65 feet in width or larger. So if the property is less than 65 foot in width along that shoreline, basically we've just been implementing for the past 20 plus years the FDOT standard, because we don't have a standard in our code, that they basically has you center the dock in between the property lines. So we're just basically codifying that FDEP standard that we've been implementing for over 20 years. And also adding the provision that FDOT allows two adjacent single-family property owners to share dock structure and subject to a setback waiver. And we have that setback waiver document that they use that we'd be able to use and record. The next item, the last item, is moving out of the residential side, going into the commercial side for marina siting standards. Currently, the Land Development Code limits the finger piers of marinas to a maximum width of 3 feet in width. And so basically, again, staff has explored what other communities have. FDP looks like, our code is outdated. Most people allow a little bit larger, especially to accommodate ADA standards. And then just providing more space, safer for the boaters to access the boats. So we're looking to just increase that from that 3 foot wide to 4 foot wide width there to accommodate that. So that that's everything. That includes all the amendments for this current cleanup that we're doing at Chapter 9. I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Stan, any questions?
No.
Scott?
No, not at all.
Both.
Didn't we deal with this in 24? Wasn't there a similar issue?
Yes, that's what I stated before. There was a variance that came in 2024.
And
they asked for a
Spruce Creek,
variance.
right?
Yes, they asked for a
right,
variance for
okay.
many of these items. When we explained during the presentation in the staff report about how our what our standard is and how it's been outdated, you guys asked us to go back and do some more research and determine if we need to do a code amendment, and that's why we're here.
That was a long time ago.
Come on, Bo, keep up.
You good?
I forgot what we did yesterday. I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
I'm good.
The only question I had was on the, and I just totally off this, sort of off the subject. The shared dock on for two property owners. Does one of them have to own it, or what happens if property A sells later and the new owner?
They have a legal document that FDOT uses, and we would use that same document if somebody wants. We haven't had that request yet.
Yeah,
but because it's something that's common that we've had some requests, but we haven't had anybody actually go through with it. But it's another provision that FDEP allows. So.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So if it's shared, could they put it right on the property line? Is that?
It depends, I mean, you could, but they're, you know, how they wanna design it.
I just wonder how it fit into the rules.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I think it's a great idea to allow that. That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, an 18
I don't think
feet
you
is
could
good.
put it actually on the property, you would still have to meet the setback requirements, so if one of the lots, it's just that they would get to share it, and there would be,
It's almost like an easement then, isn't it?
yeah,
It's really just to vary from having to put it in the middle of the lot,
yeah.
to put it off to the side and share it.
That's not for you, that's what they get paid to do, right? You'd be able to settle that. All right, great. Anybody else? No?
Nope.
All right, if you wanna call the roll, we have a motion and a second on this one.
Stan Schmidt?
Oh my God, Robert.
Oh, hang
Sorry.
on.
Gosh, you're forgetting
I didn't-
about Robert.
We cannot let him go home
Public
without
comment,
speaking.
man.
That was his whole thing.
Our public can't.
Come
leave
on
without us.
up. Public comment. You're gonna get the chance to speak too.
Hit us up.
Why?
Commissioners, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. My only question has to do with residential. And for marine sighting, A11 says no finger pier shall exceed 4 feet in width. But then the next section, B3, says no finger pier should exceed 3 feet in width. And so, should that be 4 feet also?
Did we miss one?
Penny can answer.
Penny, you wanna? I'm not sure where you're at.
Ours is 3 and it's
Thank you.
moving to 4.
Thank you.
Yes, so we specifically consulted with our engineering staff who review the dock permits and asked that question as well, because we had the same question. The only place that this comes up as an issue is the commercial marinas, and there wasn't a need to widen that for residential finger piers. So there's not an issue there that we've ever run into. So they said for now, we have the standard we have now on the residential side is fine.
Residential versus marine. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you, Robert.
Good catch.
Last chance tonight. You good?
We're gonna give you a raise.
All right, now we can move on and do a vote, right?
Call the roll.
We're good? All right, if you want to call the roll, Amanda?
Stan Schmidt?
Yes.
Scott Stager?
Yes.
Maria Mills-Penny?
Yes.
Bobo Family?
Yes.
Tom Shorter?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Very good. Any other business? I have commissioners' comments. Maria?
No, I was just gonna say tonight was rough. You know, we feel so bad for the residents, but we have a duty to do on legality and city standards and stuff. And I just want to thank the staff. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is the best plan we're gonna get. And I know that they've done their due diligence to make sure it's the best it can be to protect all the residents. So I appreciate them.
Mr. Bowe?
I just wanted to say that the staff never ceases to amaze me with the detail and the research that goes into these presentations. And I think we probably got the best of the crop here in Port Orange. Great job.
Absolutely. I echo that. Scott?
I echo both of what you guys said. You come into this and you have to look at these reports and go, I absolutely trust the people who wrote them, and not knowing Tim or Penny or really anybody when I first came in. The level of detail that goes in and the level of trust that I think we have to have on this panel is high. You have to be able to go, I believe what that person says. And I think what I was trying to say earlier when the crowd was here, I have spoken to committees like this more times than I can count. And oftentimes I've walked away going, they're not listening to me. They've already made their decisions. All of this is already figured out.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, exactly. But sitting here now and hearing them speak, I'm making notes and going, I hadn't considered that. These are things that are very important. We need to go back, and I think, even our applicant went, okay, I heard you.
Yeah.
Here's my. So I think it's just evidence that this really does work if people will come out and actually speak and speak their minds and speak it clearly and articulately. So I'm just proud to have had the opportunity to serve.
It was actually a good night because it was relatively civil and a lot of great information.
Useful.
I agree with you.
I
Thank
didn't come in
you.
with my mind made up. My mind changed 30 times just sitting here.
Or really,
We
staff.
haven't really had an experience like this in quite a while, because we haven't had subdivisions. We've had-
So that's the phone tower. That one.
Actually, no, it was my first night as chairperson when I was chair this last term. It was my very first night. Remember, we had a crowd. They were spilling out the door, and it was my first night. I was like, oh, it was rough. That was the last time we had a night like this. I don't even remember now.
All right. Hey, great job. Thank you, Tim and Penny, for helping. I mean, you guys do great work. We got one more thing here, and that is staff comments. You have any comments? Oh yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
New policy, someone asked me, how do I get in the list? And I said, you know, people always ask me that. I think the magic number is 995.
There you go. All right, last opportunity for public comments. Robert, anything?
No.
Yeah, you good?
We're good.
Robert,
Oh,
come
you
on
got it.
up.
Come on
Introduce
up.
yourself.
We're hungry though, so make it short.
I ate before coming out.
I should have.
My name is Russell Ramsey. We just moved to 1016 Wexford Way.
Oh, welcome. Oh, cool.
We moved from New Hampshire 10 years ago, and we chose Port Orange. I was in the real estate business, so I did all my due diligence, and I chose Port Orange.
Nice.
I got the bug, so I sold. We lived in our motorhome for 5 years. Lived in Beachside. Mama wanted to come back to Port Orange. We chased from Edgewater to Palm Coast to DeLand. And we just bought on Wexford Way. We moved in 1st of March. I've been attending these meetings. This is my first planning board meeting. But I've attended the code enforcement meetings. I've attended the council meetings. And I am thrilled at the quality of the volunteers and the staff in Port Orange. I come from a real estate background. I own my own company. I had people working for me. I come from the securities industry. I did real estate, insurance, investments. I built homes. And the people here are just spot on. I'm just thrilled. I'm coming just to learn. I'm coming just so that I can tell my neighbors. I went to the meeting and those guys are doing this. I was telling my neighbor how come Oak Street in Jackson is still wide open, you know, and everybody thought it was just a contractor problem. Well, it's an FPL problem. It's what it really boils down to, you know, so I kind of like to know what's going on. And I want to thank you guys for, it was a tough meeting. It was a tough meeting and you guys had to make a tough decision. So thank you for your volunteer work.
Well, you know what? We've got a chair for you.
Yeah.
You just made the pumpkin bread list. I'm not sure that's
Yeah,
going
make the
on
pumpkin
there.
bread. Thank you for
Sign up
saying.
and you could
Hey,
be
thank you.
Thank you for saying all of that. That means a lot
It really
to
does.
us because
Yeah, it does.
this really is a hard job. And thank you for showing up to meetings and caring about the community because that means a lot to us as well.
And someone recorded that, right?
Good choice in picking a new home. Oh, great.
we have
Thanks.
that?
Anybody else? Nope. Seeing none, I assume we're all ready to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Motion.